Robert Frost was born on March 26th in 1874 in San Francisco. He attended Dartmouth College, Hanover, New Hampshire in 1892 and Harvard University, but never received a formal college degree. His wife, Eleanor Miriam White, was a large inspiration for Frost until her death in 1938. When he was in England, he found inspiration in the contemporary British poets Edward Thomas, Rupert Brooke, and Robert Graves. He received many prizes, including the Medal of Honor of New York University in 1956, the Medal for Achievements in the Arts Signet Society Harvard College in 1958, and awards presented by presidents such as John F. Kennedy. The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. This poem, as well as many other poems written by Robert Frost, focuses on nature. Symbols included are the road, literal roads, and the paths we take through life. Right or wrong, the roads we take have significant impacts on our lives. These are large, life-changing decisions that cannot be changed. That is the whole idea that Frost was trying to convey to the reader through this poem. Structurally, the poem is made up of 4 stanzas of 5 lines each, with an A-B-A-A-B rhyme scheme. The poem includes a variation on an iambic tetrahedral bass, including 4 stressed syllables per line. This poem is a metaphor to the archetypal dilemma of crises and decisions of life. We have the power to choose our fate, and therefore must contemplate our decisions. Line 1, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, sets the scene. It is the setup for the fork in the road, both literally and as an extended metaphor. It shows that the speaker will be forced to make a decision later on in the poem. Lines 4 and 5. And looked down on one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, describes the road as a metaphor. Just like we can only see ahead on a path for so long, we can only view the consequences of our decisions in the future for so long. Line 6. Then took the other as just as fair, is where the speaker metaphorically experiences a sudden change of heart and makes a new decision, as he decides to take the other road, the road less traveled. He is saying that just because the road is not traveled as often does not mean that it is any lesser in comparison to the other. Line 7, and having perhaps the better claim, and line 8, because it was grassy and wanted wear, suggests that this new road is new and exciting and may be more deserving to be traveled than the other. Lines 13, 14, and 15, oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back, suggests that the speaker wishes he could take both roads, knowing that he cannot. And Frost uses this as a metaphor for the life-changing decision that can never be changed. In many situations in life, one might wish that you do not have to make a decision and just can simply accept both options. But sadly, this is usually not the case, and Frost highlights that in this poem. Lines 16 and 17, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, include irony, the poetic device. The speaker says this anticipating his future self-doubt. When analyzing the decision later on, he will be harshly critical. The sigh signifies a pause of disbelief and appreciation before he shares the story of his life-changing decision that he made with those he encounters later on in life, such as grandchildren or family members or friends. Lines 18, 19, and 20. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference, are the concluding lines of the poem. The repetition of the first line is a continuation of the extended metaphor, where the last two lines conclude this metaphor. The narrator confirms one road as that less taken, and confirms that his decision to take that road has been life-altering, and that was the goal of Robert Frost in this poem. By including the poetic device of repetition, by repeating the first line again, Robert Frost circles back to the beginning of the poem and just relates everything the way that it all relates to the speaker's life.
Fire and ice. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. For what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. In the poem Fire and Ice, Frost is really highlighting on the old age question if people would rather freeze or burn to death, which is why the poem is called Fire and Ice, because he is talking about if the world will end in fire or in ice. The rhyme scheme of the poem is A, B, A, A, B, C, B, C, B, which links the words fire and desire together, and ice and twice. So, fire is obviously linked with adjectives such as passion, desire, and jealousy, which talks about how too much passion can consume a relationship because desire is related to love, because in the poem, hate is more so related to ice. So fire more relates to the impulsive and animalistic approach to situations, but ice is more of a hatred and cruel way to approach situations, with a cold indifference, and that is also destructive in relationships, and it doesn't help anyone. In the beginning of the poem, Frost says, "From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire," which shows that he has tasted the way it is to feel the passion and desire and jealousy in the world. But then later on, he also says, "But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to know that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice." This shows, though not as much in depth as the fire and desire part, that he knows the hatred in the world, and he also knows that it can be a very destructive approach to things, and that it could also destroy the world if the world were to end in ice. Nothing gold can stay. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. For the poem Nothing Gold Can Stay, we'll be going through each line and analyzing the meaning of the lines in the poem and talking about what the significance is to the rest of the poem. The first line in the poem is nature's first green is gold, which is talking about nature, and the first green is referring to springtime, and the gold is referring to how things are new and bright in the spring. The second line is her hardest hue to hold. It means that spring doesn't stay for so long when it's new and fresh, and it fades after a very short amount of time. The third line is, her early leaves a flower, which means that the blossoms are in the beginning are flowers, which are later replaced with leaves. The fourth line is, but only so an hour, which emphasizes how it temporarily is beautiful and then it changes into something less beautiful and more ordinary. The fifth line is, then leaf subsides to leaf, which is talking about how it just becomes like everything else and it's no longer extraordinary. The sixth line is, so Eden sank to grief, which is an allusion to the story of Eden, which is referring to the fall of the biblical humans, Adam and Eve, in the Garden of Eden, and their eviction from the Garden of Eden, which some view as a tragedy, and is being compared to the change of the flowers in the springtime turning into leaves. The seventh line is, so dawn goes down to day, which is meaning that the colors are changing from gold to green, and it is saying how in dawn everything is fresh and new, as opposed to day when it's not as beautiful and colorful. So again, referring to the change in spring to a more ordinary and normal appearance. The seventh and final line is, nothing gold can stay. It again refers to the temporary pleasures in life, just like in the story of the Garden of Eden, and how dawn is more beautiful than day, and spring, though beautiful for a short amount of time, will eventually turn to a more boring and not as interesting type of appearance. Gold in the last line is referring to how it is a beautiful and joyous color, but it doesn't stick around forever, so it's more greatly savored and appreciated when it is present than if it were around all the time, just like dawn and just like springtime.